Welcome to Muslim Apologetics Australia. In this video, I want to talk about a few things that have happened. Obviously, about the news that has just come out. It's heartbreaking. It is terrible. It is abhorrent. It is the most evilest things that you could ever possibly do. Christchurch was in lockdown as a gunman. I should call him a terrorist. That's what he is, and something that the media is now not even talking about. They're not even calling him a terrorist. The word terrorist is not even there. So that's why we should voice out and call it what it is. It is an act of terrorism that has come out of Christchurch in New Zealand, where a terrorist has gone into a mosque shooting random individuals. This was a Caucasian, a white person. Some are saying that he's an Australian resident, and he's killed over 40 or 50 people. I don't know, but it's going to rise because it's only fresh. So I'm suspecting that that figure is going to rise. You know, I could turn around and go on and start generalizing and labeling, Christians as a terrorist religion and say, oh, look, this is done in the name of religion of love. But look, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to play the tactics of the right. I could, but I'm not going to do that because that's unfair. And we know that the general population in New Zealand are peace-loving people, and they love immigrants. They're a multicultural, diverse society. So I'm not going to buy into that tune by labeling and calling, the religion of Christianity or the religion of Westernism as something that is radical and something that is extreme. We know the general population condemn this, regardless if you're a Muslim or a non-Muslim. If anyone has watched the video, I suggest you don't really watch it, but I know you're going to probably watch it anyway, and it is horrendous of what this individual has done. And so we need to speak out and condemn this, but we need to also keep in mind that I'm not actually alarmed as a Muslim about this. You see, unlike a lot of other Muslims out there, I work in the field of apologetics, and I work in the field of collecting information. And so I have a Facebook page where I collect information of Western radicalism and right-wing extremism. And, there were so many times where I would contact the ASIO or intelligence agents services, reminding them and telling them and reporting certain individuals where they actually promote the act of terrorism or incite violence. And, it's to no surprise that, the intelligence agencies, for example, in this case, in New Zealand, they say that the four suspects, they weren't known to intelligence agencies. They weren't even on the radar. They weren't even on the ASIO watch list. And yet they're an Australian citizen. Now, one may ask, why is that? Well, it's not hard to draw the dots together. You see, when I start reporting things as a Muslim, really, I don't really get a realistic response back from the intelligence services. They don't even take some of the things that I say seriously. How many times I have reported certain individuals on Facebook making comments threatening Muslim communities, threatening mosques, and I report it, but you don't really hear it in the media where, someone's been reported and then that person is now charged for, spreading violence or inciting violence. You don't hear it. We're always constantly hearing, suspected Muslim terrorists have been arrested in Sydney or Melbourne, and they were planning a terrorist attack, or they were inciting jihad or violence. You constantly hear that in the media, but the amount of times that you hear right-wing extremists or terrorists being on the watch list and that they're being investigated, it's hardly unlikely. You don't hear it in the media. But the fact is, they're actually out there. And so I personally have reported many individuals who have actually incited violence towards mosques. In fact, I contacted my local mosque because that particular mosque was even threatened with violence. So I contacted them, and they actually thanked me for it and said, look, we really thank you, because I sent them the screenshots, and they basically thanked me for approaching them and warning them that, hey, look, this is a threat, so please be vigilant. And so the reason why I'm doing this video is to raise awareness that the non-Muslims, in particular those who work in politics, the people who work in media, the people who work in the intelligence agencies, you need to take the Muslim in reporting seriously. That when we send you a report, you should investigate the individual and not rub it to the side to say, oh, look, it's just, maybe he's just trying to get you angry. No, you should take everything that they say seriously, given the fact that now we are seeing mosques attacks, and we've actually seen them happen in America, and now it's hit home, it's happening here. In fact, when this attack happened today, just today, I collected so many screenshots of right-wing racists who have actually glorified this attack. Have a look at this. This is reported in the Daily Mail Australia. It says breaking news. It says shooter has opened fire at a mosque and injures 4 people. And have a look at the comments. Jason Edmonds, he's actually been reported to Asia. I've actually specifically reported him. He says, damn, he only got 4. So he's a bit disappointed because the news just came out, when the news came out, and it only mentioned a few were injured. He actually said, damn, they only got 4. Here, David Pendleton says, good job, keep it up. Ronald Pover says, let's hope he got them all. Look at that. And then Brady Neely says, just level it, it's good. Aneta Mecca, she actually gives it a thumbs up. Look at that. She's celebrating. Richard says the tables have turned. Jason says shoes on the other foot. Tony says maybe someone had enough. Andy Hall says only 20 rounds? Ha ha, he says, and missed. Must have been a crap shooter, he says. Really nice job against the nicest religion, says Aaron. Chimmy says, New Zealand, now your turn. Hit it. Don't let it pass. Build a wall. Crystal Park says, my French, newsfeed is covered on the shooting in New Zealand. To be honest, I really don't care. The Muslims got shot in a mosque, but I wish I was there to throw bacon on their dead bodies. This is Crystal Peck. Now, just imagine for a moment, folks, that this was a Muslim terrorist who walked into a church and started killing Christian worshippers. And then we had Muslim radicals in the comments section glorifying this. And they were Australian citizens. You would have ASIO breaking every single door down to arrest those Muslim glorifiers and pressing them for terror charges for inciting and glorifying and abetting terrorism. And see, this is the white privileges, folks. This shows that there is racism, that there is favoritism, that there is biasism in the Australian Intelligence Service if they're not actually going ahead and arresting these people and charging them for inciting violence. Furthermore, the New Zealand Terrorist Mosque attack was inspired by none other than those on the right. We need to start to band together as moderate human beings. We need to condemn those politicians, especially on the right, and certain public figures. People like, for example, Pauline Hanson from the One Nation Party. People like Tommy Robinson from Britain, who preach the hatred and the banning of mosques. We need to also ban people like Australian Senator Fraser Anning, who says, quote, that the New Zealand Mosque Massacre was caused by allowing Muslim immigration and because Islam is a violent religion. So notice how they're blaming the victim instead of blaming the perpetrator. These people such as Pauline Hanson, Tommy Robinson and Senator Fraser Anning, and anyone in the media who is actually facilitating and allowing Muslim hatred by the right, when they start calling them disease, cancer, calling them that they need to be eradicated, if the media and the politicians are allowing these things to take place, then they should be banned and they should be reported. Because at the end of the day, it is they are listening to. They are the ones who are inciting this. And I'm not making this up. I'll put references below this video. Have a look at the references where Pauline Hanson did say to ban the Muslim faith. So technically that's the same as saying ban all mosques. Pauline Hanson even pushes for a ban on mosque development. You can actually see the link below. I'll provide all of the references underneath this video. Tommy Robinson says that when you have a Muslim civilization, close in the West, and, they've got their homes, they've got their own places of worship, that they are automatically now an enemy combatant. You can actually see the video below, and I'll post the references. And Fraser Anning says that the reason why the New Zealand massacre happened, it was because of the influx of Muslim immigration. And notice, if a Muslim imam said this, if an imam, let's say, for example, an atrocity happened in Burke Street, for example. Let's say a Muslim went out on a killing rampage, as you saw in the news that happened quite some months ago. Can you imagine an imam of the mosque turn around and said, hey, look, the reason why that Muslim went out and started killing infidels, it is because of the countless lives lost of Muslims by Western intervention and foreign occupiers. Because that's what Senator Fraser said. He says, today is not an excuse to forget the countless lives lost to Islamic terrorist attacks. Radical Islam is still a huge threat to the West. Can you imagine if a Muslim said that? If an imam said that the reason why extremism and the reason why a Muslim goes out and commits murder is because the West is a threat to Muslim nations, that imam would be hanged in the media. They would ridicule him and tell him to step down from his position. But why is Senator Anning getting away with this? And I hope the media catches up with him. We'll see. Now, just in case you're saying, oh, look, they're not really inciting violence. So what are they doing when they're actually marginalizing Muslims and saying that they're all trying to come out and kill us? And when you try and say, ban all the mosques because they're teaching radicalism and extremism there, and you're sending all this fear campaign, what type of message are you sending to the average Australian who may have a mental condition, who may get a gun and because of fear go out and start shooting and massacring Muslims? And that's exactly what probably took place here. The man who probably walked into that mosque was intoxicated. He was probably on some sort of drugs, or maybe he had some mental issues. And so he picked up a gun and said, you know what? The government is not dealing with Muslim immigration because Pauline Hanson is right. So you know what? I'm going to take the matter in my own hands and start shooting people. Because why? Pauline Hanson is right about Muslims coming here and invading our country. You know, this isn't freedom of speech. No. This is hatred. We don't give freedom of hatred in this country. And we need to voice out as hard as we can to condemn this, that it is not basically freedom of speech. Soon as you start inciting violence and encouraging and demonizing a group of people, this no longer becomes your freedom of speech, because we know that it leads to violence, and this is a primary example of that. So I encourage the Australian politicians to ban people like Milo Yiannopoulos coming into this country, ban people like Pauline Hanson and Fraser Anning and whoever else comes to the stage to make accusations and manipulations about Islam and Muslims, and by causing division, hatred and animosity. And very finally, my last advice to also the Muslims is that we need to now wake up and understand that the intelligence services are not lifting their game to protect the Muslim minority. I hope they do in the future, but in the meantime, we need to stand up as a community to take our own precautions. And what do I mean by that? I mean that Muslims all over Australia, all of the Islamic communities here and abroad, need to take their own security measures. No, I'm not saying that all Muslims should start owning guns to protect themselves. What I'm saying is that the mosques need to lift their game up. They need to provide Muslims with a security service. You see, when a terrorist attack happens in the West by a Muslim, the Australian government know how to deal with it. They set up many security measures to prevent these things from happening. They put security bollards, in particular mass gatherings, so there aren't any car rampages. So we Muslims need to take our own measures too. I'm calling out to all the imams of Australia that you need to put security measures in your mosque. It is not to any use of saying, okay, I'm just going to put a security surveillance. That does nothing. You need to raise funds within your community to provide a security service. Now, I know you're probably not going to afford or provide it every day, since there are prayer services every single day, but to the least you should provide a security service on every Jummah, at least every Friday prayers where there are mass gatherings of people. We need to have security guards with either metal detectors installed at those doors to check anyone who comes in and who comes out of the mosque, in particular on major mosque event days, whether it's Eid prayers, whether it's during the Muslim festivals, and whether it's during Jummah, where there is Friday prayers and mass gatherings. The organisers of the mosque, the community members of that mosque, need to also provide good accessibility, entry and exit availability to those mosques, meaning when there is a tragedy, then people can exit those mosques. There is no use having one entry and one exit to the same mosque. And I've actually visited a few mosques in Melbourne, and you know what, you can actually, there's basically one entry level where you could go in and out, and very rarely you'll see a secondary exit provided for worshippers. And I actually encourage Muslims to demand their mosques to fulfill these security measures. And I actually encourage that if they're not fulfilling these security measures, then you do not attend these mosques if they're not capable of providing security measures for your safety. I mean, these poor worshippers were literally slaughtered. They had nothing to arm themselves. They had no security guards, nothing. Some guy just randomly walked in and started shooting them as if they were just a piece of sheep to the slaughterhouse. In fact, given the rise of Islamophobia, I actually knew something like this was going to happen. There have been times when I would sit in Jummah nervous, thinking that a lunatic, a crazed maniac is going to walk through and start massacring random people. And I used to feel that when I used to actually pray. And for those Muslims who say it's an honor to die in a mosque like that, we don't need to take security measures, I say to you, yes, it is an honor to die in the state of total submission to Allah, but it does not give you an excuse not to take security measures. When the Prophet ﷺ went to battle, in the Battle of Badr, he used to actually arm himself and wear body armor. He didn't say, oh, I'm going to die anyway, it's fi sabilillah, I'm going to die in war. And he didn't wear body armor. No, he actually wore body armor to protect himself. In closing, I want to give my condolences to all of the families involved. And my heart goes out to them. May Allah give you patience and sabr. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unite you with your loved one in Jannah, in paradise, because I believe they are there. They have died for fi sabilillah. They have died as martyrs. God willing, you will meet them in paradise. So with that note, please Muslims keep safe. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.